Welcome to the Urban Complex, a system of interrelated, emotion-charged ideas, feelings, memories, and impulses. This name takes the definition and lays out what a listener should expect. A podcast where ideas, feelings, and memories collide, leading towards meaningful change. I'm co-host Chris Richardson. Please enjoy the journey with the Urban Complex. Smarter cities for a stronger tomorrow.
Welcome to the Urban Complex. All opinions by Chris Richardson, Dominic Papa, and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Arizona State University or Amazon Web Services. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for any decisions. Any endorsement of or messages from sponsors are solely supporting the production of this podcast. There is no further relationship with podcast purposes than the sponsors unless separately created with another entity. Enjoy the Urban Complex. Smarter cities for a stronger tomorrow.
All right, Chris, here we are, another week, my friend. What's top of mind for you?
Well, besides the heat, which I'm sure everyone hates hearing about this time of year, we always talk about how important it is to get back to in-person combos and, whether it's a beer or coffee or whatnot. It's just funny how we say that and hear our guest today. That's how I met him. When you and I were out in San Diego for the ASU GSV conference, John Rome and I, who we've referenced on the show, we were just sitting there watching college basketball. It was the second week or third week of the March Madness, and happened to be talking to the former governor of Colorado next to me, and we had a great conversation. We shared a beer, we shared a pizza, and found out what he did, and thought I'd reach out and see if he wanted to be on the podcast. And
that's the best way to meet people, man. That's what I miss about those in-person meetings. I mean, I can't tell you how much, when you network at these events, you never know who you're going to sit next to. This is awesome.
Yeah, and it also just reinforces what you hear, and just great things we learned about Colorado. He learned more about ASU, although he knew Michael Crow. So it was just a great conversation. Yeah.
This is awesome. Should we bring him on?
Well, let's do it. His name's Bill Ritter, by the way, first, and he's with the Center for New Energy Initiatives with Colorado State University. So it's going to be awesome.
Oh, that's awesome. Former governor now leading this new energy initiative with the university. Oh, this is going to be great. Should we bring him in?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go.
Support for this episode of The Urban Complex comes from Worldwide Technology.
What if we could connect people to new possibilities, turn thinking into a way forward, solve problems before they become a problem, and share the future with everyone? We can. At WWT, we connect businesses to technology to make the impossible possible, to reach better decisions faster, to accelerate progress. Together, let's make a new world happen.
Bill, please let Dom and I give you a warm welcome to our podcast, The Urban Complex. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Chris, and you, Dom. Thank you for the invitation.
That's going to be fun. We haven't had a former governor on, so it should be interesting perspective. Before we get to that, we found the best way for our guests to build a little rapport in the podcast. Just start about background. What do you want the audience to know about you as a person, and kind of how you got to where you are today? I know you're also leading a center of really interesting importance for cities too. So we'll come to those things later in the show.
I have a pretty varied background. I'll just be happy to do it pretty quickly. I was raised on a farm in the eastern plains of Colorado. I'm one of 12 kids, so a lot of brothers and sisters. I put myself through Colorado State University, decided to go to law school. Out of all my siblings, both women and men in my family, I'm the only one in the law. The rest are all in construction of one kind or another, or farming. And so, I'm kind of the black sheep because I went to law school.
Well, you can keep them out of trouble legally, right?
Yeah, I do. I'm actually nieces and nephews and great nieces and great nephews. I became a prosecutor right out of law school, and I did that for about 5.5 years. Then I moved to Zambia as a Catholic missionary for 3 years. My wife and I lived there. We took our oldest boy with us. We had another son who was born there. We actually have 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter. But we lived there for 3 years, and I ran this nutrition center. And what a different perspective it is to live in a very sort of arid and dry part and very poor part of the world, the western province of Zambia. Came back, I was a federal prosecutor for a couple of years, then went back to the DA's office, was there for a year, and my predecessor left, and the governor appointed me to be the Denver district attorney. So I was the elected DA. I was appointed, but I had to run for office 3 different times. So I served for 12 years as the elected district attorney and was what would be the chief prosecutor in the city and county of Denver. And because I also, was 2 blocks from the Capitol, I spent a lot of time in the Capitol and developed a real sense for not just criminal justice policy, but policy generally. And I was term limited. We're the only state in the country that has term limits for DAs, or I might still be the DA of Denver because I really enjoyed the work so well. But because I developed a sense for electoral politics as the DA, and because I also had this real burning desire to do policy at a different level than I had as the district attorney, I ran for governor in 2006. Most people told me I couldn't win a primary, because the Dems could be a bit progressive, and I was a prosecutor and had some nuanced views that were different from the very sort of progressive left. And they said, you'll never win a primary. And I didn't have one. So I don't know. It just kind of worked out so bizarrely that people kept telling me I wasn't going to win because I couldn't get past the primary stage. And didn't have one. So I won the governor's race in 2006, started in office in 2007.
Wow, that's amazing. It really makes sense, kind of the progression, although now you're in clean energy. So let's switch over to that. Our last guest, Tyler Spivak, he runs the Colorado Smart City Alliance and said great things about what you're doing. So what should our audience know about the Center for the New Energy Economy and/or Colorado State University, which I believe it's housed under?
Yeah, we're at Colorado State University. It's called the Center for the New Energy Economy. And I'd like to talk a little bit about its formation because that's part of why we do what we do. As governor, I was governor from 2007 to 2011, made a conscious decision not to run again, decided that I would leave and go into academia where I would found the center. And part of that had to do with the fact that while I was governor, I signed 57 different bills relating to clean energy, and we made it. And it's more vogue, I would say, now than it was at the time. We were like California, New York. We were sort of early on looking at climate, clean energy together and saying there's a real economic development potential for this. And at the same time I did that, Chris, the United States Congress passed exactly 0 energy-related bills. They were still managing, our energy policy through fiscal policy, tax credits. So the production tax credit, the investment tax credit were really important. But in terms of really doing the kinds of things that might have been important to developing a national energy policy, it didn't happen. Now, I will say that the ARA funding had clean energy money in it. It became sort of a political wedge issue for a lot of people when Barack Obama ran again in 2012, the way they'd spent some of that money. We all remember the Solyndra case. So I found 2 things: that it was easier to move a clean energy agenda at the state level, and secondly, that you could get bipartisan support for it. That it felt to me like at the national level in Congress, in the United States Senate, there's just so much bickering. There was just a wider and wider chasm between where the parties came down on both clean energy as an economic development tool, but also on climate and climate issues. And now we see the states are marrying those 2 things. So when I left, I'm a lawyer. As I said, I went to law school and had some nice offers from different law firms that are national firms to be part of their energy group. And some of those law firms had, other U.S. senators or former FERC commissioners who were part of it. And I just decided to go and start my own shop at Colorado State University to work with governors. And that was the original vision. It was to really do this sort of in anecdotally first, like find governors that were willing to entertain the discussion. And over time, what we've done is build a shop that doesn't just work with the governor's offices. In fact, probably do a better job of working with utilities, utility commissioners, environmental NGOs. We still do a lot with governors, but we also run a legislative academy for state legislators from around the country. We're adamant that it's bipartisan, that it has Democrats and Republicans who are attending this. We call it the Clean Energy Legislative Academy. And we have this group that we utilize to help us ensure that we have both sides of the aisle represented, called the Conservative Energy Network. And Dom, you may know about them because they have a presence in Arizona, they have a presence in Colorado, but they really earned their spurs, as we say, in places like Michigan and North Carolina and Ohio, where they either passed clean energy legislation or defeated things that were sort of hostile to the development of clean energy. So that's what we do. We monitor every piece of state legislation that's introduced, and we track it all the way to whether it either dies or becomes law. And then we take that information and we do a gap analysis. And we look at what states have done sort of the most on clean energy policy and what states have not done as much. And we utilize that to help legislators think about what's still out there for them to do from a state perspective to really make a difference. So I'll just give you these two websites, AELtracker.org. AEL stands for Advanced Energy Legislation Tracker.org. So AELtracker.org. And then the other one is spotforcleanenergy.org. SPOT is State Policy Opportunity Tracker. So those two websites, AEL.tracker.org and spotforcleanenergy.org, are the ones that we maintain to do both the tracking, but also the gap analysis for states and try and help states think about what they can or can't do. We also have done some individual state legislative academies. So Virginia is a good instance. We went to Virginia the year before they passed their big clean energy legislation. I think it was in 2018. In 2017, my team and I met with Virginia legislators to talk specifically about the kinds of things they can do in Virginia. So we're very sort of focused on that. I also have some conversations I'm a part of, and really the stakeholder outreach person for a conversation involves CEOs of utilities, CEOs of environmental NGOs, so think the Environmental Defense Fund, the Nature Conservancy, World Resource Institute, and some others, and then environmental justice leaders to ask the question, how does the power sector get to net zero carbon in a timely fashion, but also in an equitable way? How do we do that in a way that's just and fair to marginalized communities, many of which have borne the brunt of so many polluting resources being built next to them? So that's kind of a synopsis. We have a lot of other things. We do some things with coal-dependent communities that are transitioning out of coal and trying to help them think about how that might happen. And so those are examples of things that we're doing. We're looking at at different markets in the West and how to be more efficient in terms of moving power across the West, and we run that little program as well. So we have a lot of different projects and a great team at CSU.
That's awesome. I mean, Governor, that's just amazing. Like, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I mean, you were such a visionary. I mean, back in the day, no one was talking about clean energy, new energy as an economic development tool, and now today, everyone's talking about it. But I mean, for you to start that back then and just have that vision, I mean, it's incredible to look across the country now and look at all the states actually vying for new energy economy. I mean, it's just so incredible that you had that foresight back then to start this. So it's going to be a great conversation. I absolutely know it. So congrats on all your success.
I think you know this, Dom, from the work you've done both at the municipal and the state level. I was the face of it in many respects. I had a fantastic team. I just had a great team of people who were themselves, they're sort of visionaries, and they were waiting for somebody to come along that may not have known two things about a kilowatt hour when I was the district attorney of Denver, but was willing to sort of learn and think about it from all those perspectives. And so, we thought about it from sort of an energy perspective, an economic development perspective, an equity perspective, and an environmental perspective. It had 4 E's. It was a good mnemonic device. But thank you, and I appreciate what you say. I just give so much credit to the people whom I surrounded myself with because of their own sort of level of passion and vision.
You bet. That's awesome. So, Governor, let's zoom out a little bit. So this is a podcast around smart cities, and I think this is actually the first time we've had someone from kind of the state level perspective chime in about their view of smart cities. And obviously cities need to your point right then, they need a leader at the state level helping guide them a little bit on a lot of the policy work, because a lot of the policy comes from the state level. So talk to us about your view of smart cities from your perspective, and we'll dive into a little bit how you apply that to your work today. But talk to us. What do you think of when you hear smart cities? What do you think of, and how do you view it?
I'll tell you what I once was told. So Colorado is one of Xcel Energy's 7 states, or maybe 8 states, and they were going to do a smart meter program. They were looking at Boulder, Colorado, and they did that, but it flopped terribly. And it kind of was a great concept, but the technology was early, and there was just no sort of real, I think, there wasn't enough thinking at the time about what it would take to be something that people could adapt to and be willing to utilize. And that's Boulder. That's a very progressive place. There may be other reasons that it failed, but what I do know is that was 2008 when they first talked to me about smart meters. In the 13 years since then, to go from sort of this thinking about smart meters to thinking about smart cities and to have comprehensive planning happening around it. One of the things I'll say is that the mayors, and it really is true, the closer to the ground you get, the more people are really thinking about how to do sort of energy and the built environment and transportation and climate policy all together. And I think everybody should appreciate that once upon a time, those things were all sectored. We thought about transportation policy here, thought about the built environment here and at the city level, mainly with building codes. And we thought about the power sector over here, sort of how are we going to get our energy? We thought about water, separately. And we thought about climate as something that maybe we should embrace because of these other 4 things. We don't think about those 4 things separately anymore. And that's one of the, I think, virtues of smart cities is they've merged those issues. And they come under the rubric of carbon footprints and really, carbon footprints, VOCs, but sort of the climate costs to business as usual. And I think, maybe, I don't know how widespread your audience is, but we in Colorado and you in Arizona know that in addition to carbon, water has become such an important part of the climate discussion. And municipalities, while they are not the biggest off-taker of water in the West, ag is, they are also at a place where they're going to have to adjust in a very serious way. So what I think the virtue behind smart cities is that they are thinking about this from a very comprehensive way and saying, okay, we have to think about the built environment differently. And, building codes may be one way to manage that, but there may be a variety of other ways for us to manage that. We have to think about transportation. We passed in Denver a sales tax that was about climate. That sales tax right now is being used in part to give people a rebate for purchasing electric bicycles. Oh, wow. So they have a different way of, traveling to and from the downtown area or any other part of the metro area. But I think you have to be a Denver resident to take advantage of that. It's not just the metro area, but that's just like one small example of a city saying, this is all part of the same thing. And we want to be, ahead of the pack. The other thing that cities do pretty well, I think, is they work together on this. There's the mayor's conference. There's in Colorado, we have I think it's called the Colorado Climate Communities Group. Oh. And they're all people who are all municipalities who are very concerned about climate change. And so they're helping each other think about at the municipal level, at the town level, at the sort of sub-state level, what's the best way to attack this and what are the successes other people have enjoyed.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's incredible. So Governor, talk to us about, I love that idea. You're exactly right. Smart cities kind of broke down those silos, built partnerships, kind of looked at challenges from a comprehensive standpoint, a systems standpoint. Talk to us a little bit. Let's just dive a little bit deeper. How are you kind of applying that mindset, that like comprehensive mindset into the work you're doing around new energy? Well,
again, our work is largely with states. We've done some things to help towns and cities think about this, but it's largely with states. And at the state level, it's interesting. One of the things I should have said, Dom, is the municipalities, that's one thing, right? Smart cities are one thing, but joint action is the most effective way to get this done. So for cities to work with states, with state legislatures, with state governors, that's sort of the best way to do this. And there may be some where there's tension or even hostility. But again, across the country, states are looking at building codes because the states have the ability to require municipalities to do certain things with respect to building codes. And Colorado is a good example. We just passed a law that is going to require municipalities to have sort of the most up-to-date building code that is published by the Department of Energy. And, it comes every couple of years. When I was governor, I signed a law that said you had to have at least, I think it wasn't the last building code that had been published, but the one before that. Well, this governor got even more, our governor, Governor Polis, was even more aggressive about that and said that it has to be sort of a rolling update for municipalities. And that means, and these building codes are constantly looking at ways to improve on energy efficiency inside buildings, whether it's residential or commercial spaces. And there is very much a clean energy view in sort of the updating of these building codes. So anybody at the state level that is looking at municipalities and saying you have to do this in terms of updating, that is a clean energy agenda that they have that is joint action on the part of the states and the cities, and that gives you, at the end of the day, good output, a good result for the municipality. So that's in part how we're thinking about that. The second thing is, the cities actually have, in many respects, a relationship with their utilities, although the regulation happens at the state level. So the city and county of Denver, they work with Excel to ensure that the kinds of things they're hoping to do in terms of meeting their carbon footprint reductions or their carbon emissions reductions, that they're actually going to meet that. But most of that is happening. The utility is doing it because of what is happening at the regulatory level with the utility commission. I know you have an elected commission in Arizona. There are, I think, 5 or 7 elected commissions around the country. The rest are appointed, but every state has some kind of a regulatory environment, with the exception probably of Nebraska. Nebraska has sort of a different animal there called public power districts. And so, that is also this important way for the state and municipalities to interact and to understand, okay, if the power sector is one of your largest emissions, how can we reduce those? What's the necessary thing? And so we've seen the renewable portfolio standards, the renewable energy standards. Now there's sort of a move to clean energy standards as a part of that. And the municipalities and their advocacy for that has been a really big part of, I think, moving the needle on this.
That's amazing. You covered quite a bit from the perspective of how a governor views that, and kind of what Colorado is doing, and really interesting the interplay of those municipalities with the state. Knowing what you know now, like if you were governor today, how might you recommend to other governors or do even more from the state? I mean, you've talked a lot about with carbon neutrality and energy, but are there other areas too, or just, I don't know, have you put any thought in this, or maybe?
Yeah, I absolutely. And so here's, when we were doing it, it was sort of the beginning of the transition. We're now in the middle, in the power sector particularly, but also in the transportation sector. We're in the middle of a very significant transition. And, people said, well, there are going to be winners and losers when we start passing clean energy policies, and coal dependent communities feel very much like they're losers here. But there's also a massive cash input from the private sector. Most utilities around America have very significant ambitions around the build out of clean energy, whether it's renewables, whether it, some are looking at things like natural gas with carbon capture and sequestration. Others are looking at nuclear. There is an article in our paper today about small advanced nuclear reactors as the possibility of a big part of the transition. But Chris, all that's going to come with this capital infusion and this transition that is both an economic and energy transition, but also a workforce transition. So if I were a governor today, I would think about this as an opportunity to sort of rebuild in a way that's different. And it is part of this national conversation we're involved in, and do it in an equitable way. If you mapped where we built coal in America and where we built other kinds of polluting resources, whether it's an oil refinery or a petrochemical manufacturing, it was around a lot of poor communities, marginalized communities. communities with people of color. And we have this chance now in this transition to say, we're going to do that differently. We're going to actually rebuild the energy systems in this country, and we're going to be mindful about equitable concerns about where we build resources, particularly where we build anything that has the potential to still pollute, when and how we take down polluting resources that are continuing to pollute. That's an important part of it. And then how we develop workforces in a way differently than we did. Well, if you think about when we built the last energy system, right? The coal-fired energy system in America created the middle class. It actually created one of the best manufacturing sectors in the entire world, maybe the best, okay? Let's say that. So we owe that a lot. But we also did that in a fashion where, we built a lot of that next to poor communities that have been redlined because people couldn't live in other places. And so, the property values were low, then they got lower because we built polluting resources next to them. There's a different way to think about this. That's sort of this comprehensive way, again, to say we can address equity concerns at the same time we address economic and environmental concerns with this energy transition. And I would love it if someone would be able to articulate that in a way and embrace that vision. But I think that's sort of the thing we have the possibility to do. There's a little community in Arizona. Now I'm trying to remember, I think it was Randolph, Arizona. And SRP, second largest utility in Arizona, wanted to build new gas, went to the commission, said they wanted to build it all in Randolph, Arizona. Randolph, Arizona is a town that was created by African Americans for African Americans who were not allowed to live in other places. There were migrations to communities. If you were from, and I'm not making this up, I'm not using this just as an example, from Oklahoma, and somebody said you're not allowed to live in this community in Oklahoma in the 40s or the 50s, African Americans often migrated out of there and created their own towns, as they did in Randolph, Arizona. SRP was going to build all of its new gas there. The commission said, no, that's an equitable concern, right? And the kind of thing, if you're thinking about, how we manage this transition, we need to do it around, thinking about creating wealth in communities that we have not done that before. We're developing a workforce, utilizing those. And it sounds, in some cases, it may sound like a pipe dream, but I think we have this tremendous opportunity because of this transition to do this and to do it right this time.
Love it.
It sounds like a theme is the collaboration, because if you have more stakeholders around the table and thinking holistically and breaking down these silos, you can get better outcomes in a lot of ways. It's been kind of consistent throughout. So let's bring it back to some of the work you're doing at the center. You because maybe this is a way you can do some of what you just said. You referenced the Clean Energy Legislative Academy, and I believe it's coming up. So you said it's bipartisan. What do you aim, like what is the expected outcome from the gathering? What do you hope you achieve, and what trajectory does it put the participants on?
So I think by now we probably had legislators from nearly all of the 50 states. And what we start with is a brief for the legislators to say, here's the path you're on with respect to clean energy. You've gotten this far so far here. This is still maybe a gap and something you could do. And so really, the first order of business is to educate the legislators about their own states. I feel, I don't know how to say this, but I don't want to act like a hypocrite here, because I didn't know a lot about energy when I started running for governor. And so there are plenty of legislators who are on energy committees, even some who might chair an energy committee, who don't know a lot about sort of this clean energy transition or the policy levers that can move it. And yeah, that's not, when I say that, that's not condescension at all, because I was very much in the same place as a candidate for governor. And so these are people who've already been elected, and typically they are serving on either an energy or a natural resources committee in their state. We brief it, and then we work with them over the course of 3 days to sort of bring in a lot of other issues. Okay, what is the world of EV? What's the world of battery charging? What's the world of, power sector storage? We, as I said, have a whole presentation from the Conservative Energy Network to talk about how do conservatives get into this? How do they think about it? How do progressives and conservatives talk about clean energy legislation and try and develop a common language about that. We have an environmental justice aspect to it. This year, our speaker is going to be Cecilia Martinez, who ran the Environmental Justice Project inside of the Council of Environmental Quality at the White House, and is now with the Bezos Earth Fund. And so, we also have a national security discussion about this. We're not sure who's going to do that. The admiral who usually does it is unable to attend in person, so we're looking for somebody that can come in person. But there is a national security implication to our being able to manage this transition, to manage the build out of the grid, to take what's in some places a fairly dilapidated grid and modernize it. So we talk about the national security implications of that, and then send people home and say, we're your resource for your next legislative session. Let us know what we can do to help, and we will, we'll help legislators. In some cases, we may help them write legislation. In some cases, we may help them think about other partners or other allies that they want for that.
Well, so much of your work has to have been put in such a different context through COVID and now this war in Ukraine. Like, all of it's coming to the forefront where things are dramatically changing in terms of people's habits, as well as, I was just reading yesterday that Germany is going back to coal production to take dependency away from what they've relied on Russia, so there's just so much of this that's coming to play because we weren't in the best position. How have you and the center looked at all of this the last 2 years?
Well, I think first of all, COVID is, I appreciate doing a podcast and, utilizing Zoom to do a podcast, but it's so much easier when you're facilitating discussions and you're trying to get people on, who may have different perspectives. You're trying to get them to yes in a room. Let's take the discussion about the power sector, environmental NGOs, and environmental justice. You have three really separate groups of people, and you're trying to get them to yes. And on a screen, there's just so much more difficulty in trying to do that than if you're in person, and empathy kind of can kick in and people say, sure, oh, I hear that perspective differently than I might if we were on a Zoom call. So I really appreciate that this podcast is possible.
And the things that happen outside of the actual meeting where people reinforce it. Dom and I say this all the time, like being able to have a coffee with someone or a beer with someone, or just the side conversation going to and from the bathroom.
Absolutely.
That's what solidifies, did I hear this correctly? Because sometimes in the large groups, it brings you together, but then you need those touch interactions to bring it to life.
I think that's even true when it's my team. We're not disparate individuals trying to get to yes, but the best ideas we've had were hatched over a cup of coffee or a beer, where somebody said, why don't we think about this?
Or a new guest on the podcast.
Yeah.
That's right. The second question you asked is so important. I'm just watching the Biden administration, and it's a great way to think about leadership. So often people are black and white, and you can like Joe Biden or not, but just if people would just listen to this kind of analysis, Joe Biden's the biggest climate hawk we've had as a president in the history of the country. He wants to do more around climate. If you looked at his campaign materials and some of the things that he's done and said, many of the things that he's done and said, the people he surrounded himself with, and then he gets hit by this invasion where Russia invades Ukraine. And, we as a country went from zero exporting of liquefied natural gas to being the number one exporter. We still have 20 permits, I believe it is, for liquefied natural gas in the queue. And Jennifer Granholm, a friend of mine, who is, she was governor of Michigan when I was governor of Colorado. She's also very much a clean energy advocate. She has to decide about permitting liquefied natural gas export terminals. And there's a lot of methane leakage. Don't think that these things have no carbon footprint. And we have to do it in a way. We have to do that because it's important that our allies in Russia, or not in Russia, in Europe, have reliable, affordable energy. And there is, a sense that liquefied natural gas can be cleaner than coal if you're capturing methane along the value chain. But you're right, Germany is the great example. So we're going to export more liquefied natural gas to Germany with a carbon footprint associated with it. And we're going to do that so that they burn less coal and don't have to be dependent upon Russia, which is now hostile to the interests of Western Europe, and I'd call the Western world. And it's just fascinating that a person who cares so deeply about climate, both, so if you think about all of them, the president, the secretary of state, the secretary of energy, all of them have to sort of be on board trying to think about what we do now to assist our allies. So this geopolitical problem is lying like a pall over all the things that were hoped for in terms of climate progress in this administration.
Yeah. Such an incredibly important point, and I think it's actually a good segue to. We saw that you recently published a book called "Powering Forward." Talk to us about it. What would you like our audience to know about the book to make them go out and grab a copy? Because I mean, it sounds like a lot of this might be hidden in there, and it's. I mean, this is great material right here.
Well, thanks, Dom. Yeah, so I did publish it. It was a few years ago, so it's been out a few years, and actually, sort of what's happened in the last few years has sort of, I think, reaffirmed my sense about what was happening. Because one of the things that we said, many of the things that I've said, I think the coal industry is on its way out. And it's interesting, in fossil fuel states, Colorado is the 10th largest producer of coal in the country. When I was governor, our utilities and power providers have now announced that all the coal in Colorado will be shut down by 2031. Even I in the book didn't predict that. And I know a lot of people around the country for whom this comes as an absolute surprise. If you'd have made a bet on that, on what was going to happen to the coal industry back when I was governor, there'd be a lot of people that they'd bet a lot of money against how precipitously that has changed. I think one of the other things we do is talk about the build out of renewables and how important it is to do it quickly and to do it massively. That's now the intent of utilities. The interesting thing we also talked about is the interesting play on natural gas. And what's so interesting to me about natural gas is you have all these utilities that have really serious ambitions around 2030, 2035, 2040, 45, 50. I think Arizona Public Service they've got a 2030 goal, 2040 goal, maybe a 2050 goal. But the question is, what about natural gas? Because you can't get to zero with a fossil fuel. You might get to some kind of close to zero with a fossil fuel and carbon capture and sequestration. And so, we deal with this. And then it's interesting. The other thing I say about this, sort of at the end in the conclusion, and thinking about how to write the chapter to conclude it, I actually wrote about the evils of campaign finance. It doesn't sound like it's about energy policy, but so much of what I kept seeing in what was the impediment to people thinking in, sort of the right way about what we needed to do about clean energy, about the economic development potential around it, but also about climate. So much of that was being impeded by these big amounts of money, and a lot of it dark money, coming into campaign coffers and influencing how policyholders, particularly in Washington, D.C., were influenced by that. And so, I enjoyed writing a book. It was a labor of love. Yeah, I'd love it if people would, take a look at it. But I make the case that America is the best innovating nation in the country. America is also the country that should lead this transition, and we should not forego that position. We shouldn't, yield that to any other country in the world. We have the ability to do this, but we have some impediments, and they need to get out of the way.
Yep.
You referenced APS. We had Jeff Goldner, CEO, on the show about 2 months ago. Just FYI, he spoke to some of that too. But
yeah, I'm happy with his leadership. I was involved in a way in trying to negotiate a deal between APS and Tom Steyer, who kept running ballot measures in Arizona and losing. And it was just time. And I think really because of Jeff's leadership, I know Tom Steyer individually and as a person, and just as a person who's been very involved in this stuff. And so I helped create the deal where Arizona Public Service said we'll set these targets, and Steyer said I'm not going to finance anything in Arizona anymore if you are working to meet those targets. So
oh wow, that's
awesome.
Great work though. So we do have two standard questions as we wrap up. What do you hope? What help do you need more? We're always willing to open doors. If there's a guest listening, maybe they can open a door, or they can, if the perfect thing that they do move the needle, what would it be?
So I think there are a few things. Number one, I think, and I say this in the book as well, Dom, we are best at this as a two-party system. Generally, we're just best at this when both sides of the aisle can think about how to get involved and, and move the rock down the road, for lack of a better expression, just to do it in a bipartisan way. I really believe this. And it's why so much of what we've done at the center invests in conservatives, invest in Republicans, and helping them think about clean energy. And so anything people can do to help us do that. If you know Republican legislators from Arizona or other places that would be willing to attend the Clean Energy Academy next year, we're full for this year, that'd be great. If they want to reach out to us and just have a discussion with us, we even travel as a team. Like I said, we'll come to a place like Arizona and talk, but we're adamant about that discussion being with both sides of the aisle. If you have a sense that after the governor's race in Arizona, whatever the outcome is, if that governor wants at any level to have us assist, we're willing to do that and able to do that. We think it's such an important part of this. The environmental justice part of this is also so important in Arizona. I mean, again, the Navajo generating station, which was in Arizona, has been taken down, and what happened there is a very good example of environmental justice sort of kicking in, or social justice, economic justice, racial justice, all sort of kicking in as an interplay with this transition. How do you take care of a very marginalized community, the people who are on the Navajo reservation, some of whom didn't even have electricity to their home when the generating station was built and the wires ran over their reservation? So what I would like is help thinking about, both sides of the aisle, but also this environmental justice aspect of the transition. And I think, what's incredible to me, Arizona and Arizona State University and places like that are very much involved in that conversation in positive ways. So that's good.
Yeah, for sure. Our school sustainability is doing amazing things. Research is doing amazing things. So, I as you know, been affiliated with ASU, Arizona State University, for 7 years now. It's just crazy to see the progress. All right. So final question, is there anyone that you're particularly appreciative that's helped you along the way? We know Dom and I, we've had so much hope for this podcast and in our work. Plus, selfishly, if you think any of them might be a great guest on the podcast, we'd love to know that too.
So there's a guy that I am great friends with. We started working. He was the head of my energy office, Tom Plant, and he really is kind of a genius. I mean, I think he's a genius, and so it's such a privilege to work around people with sort of a genius mentality. And Tom was the person who, after I took office, said, "Okay, this is all the stuff you campaigned on. It's fantastic. Can we really do this? Let's just do as much as we can. Here are the ways we do it." So then Tom and I went to Colorado State University together at the center. We're still together, and we always joke, he's the person who says, "Why don't we try this?" And usually he means, "Why don't you try this?" He's a great idea guy. So Tom Plant has been wonderful. The woman who is the assistant director at the center, Dr. Suzanne Tegan, she was at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. She's fantastic in that she decided to take on coal-dependent communities and try and understand, workforce development, economic development issues around coal-dependent communities and what that transition can look like over the next 10 to 20 years. There are some coal-dependent communities who lost their coal overnight and they were caught flat-footed. We're trying to work in a way that places in Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona, Utah, have a different future than that. And so she's also a person who would be a great podcast guest, both of them.
That's great. Well, with that, the Urban Complex gives a big note of thanks to today's guest, Bill Ritter, Director of the Center for New Energy Economy at Colorado State University and former governor of the state of Colorado. Thanks for joining us. It's been a blast.
Well, thanks, Chris. Thanks, Dom. It was really a pleasure for me. So thanks.
This is great.
Support for this episode of the Urban Complex comes from Worldwide Technology.
What if we could connect people to new possibilities, turn thinking into a way forward, solve problems before they become a problem, and share the future with everyone? We can. At WWT, we connect businesses to technology to make the impossible possible, to reach better decisions faster, to accelerate progress. Together, let's make a new world happen.
All right, Dom, that was Bill Ritter. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, awesome. You could feel his passion for energy, and you can just feel his passion for just politics and public impact in general. But I mean, so much that stood out to me, but in particular, because, I was at the state not too long ago, kind of fighting this fight as well. And he said something that really stuck with me, like at the very beginning, talking about, there are a lot of people out there trying to move this along, but it took someone, a champion at the state level. And this is where I think it's interesting play between cities and state. It took someone at the state level to say, he was an energy expert, but he could see the potential. And it just took someone to champion it and understand like, hey, this is not only the, environmentally best decision. This is also an economic development best decision. This is also, a collaboration best decision. It just took that leadership at the state level. How many times have we talked about it takes a mayor to really champion the smart city effort to really get it going? It took a governor here, someone that came from, a law background, a district attorney, not an energy background, but he saw it, he understood it, and he championed it. And guess what is happening now? Colorado is one of the forefront states driving new energy, clean energy, economic development wise forward. I don't know. That just stuck with me, because how many times, Chris, have we literally said you need a strong leader, whether it's city manager, mayor, to drive smart city efforts? Well, when it's something as big as energy and the policy that's involved with energy, with the utilities and things like that, sometimes you need a strong governor like Bill to really champion it, to get things moving. I don't know.
And kudos to Bill to be open to something he doesn't know about. I mean, absolutely. I found that the humbleness of him saying, look, I get a lot of credit for this, but it took great people with passion to educate me. Yep. And so think about that. Also, if you're listening and you've got a great idea, you have to think about, how do you package your idea in a way that's going to resonate to get that champion? I mean, yep. Dom, you and I both know how tough it is. We both are involved and are led and or been secondary to some amazing ideas that still haven't caught fire yet, because we're trying to get that right champion at the right time with the right business plan. And you're right. I mean, that's what goes across the bipartisan side, is when you can have the story told in a way that resonates, that lifts the ships for everybody. It's hard to say no to. And there's a lot of interplay there. That's a great point.
Yeah. What about you? What stood out for you? I mean, we can keep going, but I'd love to hear.
Well, I mean, the working together and incentivization, I'm just going to kind of dig into what, you kind of started it. He just kept saying that. And it's like, whether it's his mayor's conference, mayors talking across mayorships, or a climate communities group, or just the way by which the state works with the city to incentivize correctly. I thought that rebate for purchasing e-bikes. Hey, you know what? If we can redirect sales tax to get people to do even more, and it's something they want anyways, guess what? It reinforces. I thought his definition of smart cities was really interesting too. Very different. And he was kind of talking about how, the energy sector, the built environment sector, the transportation sector, water sector, climate policy sector have always been siloed. But if you can, what's smart meant to him is that they're kind of at the table together and they're jointly solving problems, and they're incentivizing at the city level with the state level the right way, you get movement. And I just think that's why it's been so hard. He also said something about the price to pay if you're not moving forward is something similarly opposite. And so if you're stagnant and you can't get moving, you're going to fall behind. And it's hard to catch up on some of these things.
Absolutely. There's two things I want to touch on there. I mean, how many times have we said that? People are voting, so to speak, with their feet. They're choosing where to live.
Totally.
But if you don't become a smart city, you're going to lose population. That you lose taxes, you lose revenue. Same thing. People want to live in clean, new energy states, right? They want to be around these types of environments. So he's exactly right. If you risk peril if you fall behind and you become a state that no one now wants to live in because, you're a coal state or whatever it might be. So I think that's really interesting. And then what did you think? I love this idea, and I've tried to advocate for this so many times, especially around smart cities, this legislative academy or this academy for mayors, because I feel like any new coming mayor, any new coming city council member should have like a smart city training day. I love that he's doing this legislative academy and trying to at least get people aware of what's going on, because how many times have we seen it? Someone gets elected and they have no idea what might clean energy or energy mean. And so they don't know what they're voting on. And these are massive bills at times. And so I just love this idea of like a legislative academy run through the university. I love it.
I think it's brilliant. And I've looked at those two sites, the AEL tracker and the Spot for Clean Energy tracker. I've seen the amount of data they have nationwide that they're probably using to educate when these people come. And the fact that it's public, that they can go there and kind of see how they're faring over time is amazing. You also saw that he's really happy that COVID's behind us, where they can get the people in person, because that must have been really tough trying to do those things over Zoom. But yeah, I think that academy is naturally set up. It's got to be bipartisan. I heard that loud and clear. He brings credibility to the governor's teams because he was a governor. He's also brings credibility because he's done all this policy in the space that's being recognized on a national attention. So I think it's set up for success. We'll have to ping him afterwards, and we'll see. Maybe we can get Arizona more involved. And I don't know if they are or not, but it's great.
They should be. That's awesome. That's great. All right. Awesome. Hey, well done. Way to find him watching March Madness. That's what a great connection. He's
multitasking
awesome.
With the beer in the hand, it always helps.
Heck yeah. We'll have to bring him back on again. It's been a Colorado month for us. Let's shift to cracks in the pavement. What do you have for us?
Well, Elon Musk loves to steal the press, whether it's Tesla or Twitter or who knows what. And here it is again today. Las Vegas approves the Boring Company's loop under downtown. I just think, you think of a big, bold vision, the Boring Company being able to drill under, create paths for transportation to bypass. I mean, we've heard of some of the big digs in Boston and Seattle going messy. I mean, he's taken a big risk. I think it's just great that Las Vegas has said, yep, let's do it. Unanimously approved in agreement with the Elon Musk-owned company, permits Boring to build, own, and operate underground tunnels beneath the strip. I mean, if we can pull this off, talk about a way to really revitalize and optimize traffic. Think of the people we've had from transportation back in LA. I mean, what you think of traffic there. So it's just exciting. Any thoughts around it from yourself?
No, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, this is the kind of thinking that cities need to start at least, having in order to move the needle. I mean, think about it. We've all been to Vegas, and it's hot. Walking from even one side of the strip to the other side of the strip, it takes a while. It's hot. Like, think about if you could do this underground easily, commute. It could just change the game. And I see that, other cities like San Antonio, Miami are all looking at it too. So I just think this is a great opportunity to see what happens.
And it's just really interesting how it's going to work. I mean, I was reading, it says passengers will board most of these stations above ground, and then they'll get into the system to move through. So it'll just be a way. I mean, how the strip is. It's just so congested. So,
well, think about you've been to CES. Think about walking from one end of the convention center to the other. It's almost a mile, right? It's massive. And think if you could now shuttle people so much easier. I think it's just, and what I'm really excited about, it will show us what it's like with a city that has already been constructed, built, to how do they now integrate something like this, not from the very beginning. How do they kind of readapt? I think it's going to be really cool to watch.
Sounds good. Well,
awesome.
We'll definitely be watching. And thanks, Aldrin, for joining. That's a wrap. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, see ya. Good one.
Thanks for listening to The Urban Complex. Smarter cities for a stronger tomorrow. Please find us on where you listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. We do love your feedback. Let us know if you have ideas for guests or questions to air on Cracks in the Pavement via social media. The The Urban Complex is found on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Or just shoot me an email, chris@theurbancomplex.com. Till next time.